Bienvenidos, Ushamdid, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course. And in this video tutorial, we're now going to be diving into Lab 6.2.7, which is a very cool lab, where we're going to be building a sample web app in a Docker container. And there's all kinds of different components that are going to go into this lab, but we're going to start with part 2. And part 2 is all about creating a bash shell script. So what are you going to learn in this video specifically? Well, we're going to be diving into the bash shell, which is the born again shell. And the born shell was one of the original Unix shells before Linux was even a thing. And so the born again shell has extended the features and functionalities of the original born shell. And we're going to dive into that. We're going to create a quick script, talk about some semantics around execution of scripts. And what I'm going to be doing, you could do the creation of the script in VS Code, like you see here. And again, I'll explain why I've got these 2 lines here. We only need one of them. You could do it in VS Code. However, I'm going to be doing everything from the CLI. So you might want to try the CLI steps that they provide here, but let's go ahead and dive in. If I was to be in my home directory, we want to be in the labs devnet sample app directory. And this is where we're going to be using that touch command. And remember, touch can be used to create a file. Now, I already have the user-input.sh file here, so I could say, touch user-input2.sh or 3.sh. And all the touch command is doing, if you remember from our previous lectures, is it's creating those files, but the files are empty. So if I was to say ls-l, you can see user input 2 and 3, they have 0 bytes. So there's nothing inside of them. It's just a blank template that we can then use and edit and create a script. And so then we've got the user-input.sh. That's the script we really want to work with. So they give us some clues here that we can use the nano editor, right? So I could say nano user-input.sh. And this is a little easier to use than Vim or VI improved. And so let's talk about these first 2 lines up here. Now, this is referred to commonly as the magic number, right? And it's some special sequence of characters that represent the magic code. Think of it like that. And all this is this is telling the script when the script is run where the bash shell resides on this system. In other words, the DEVASC virtual machine. Now, the line below it is just an example, which I'm actually going to be erasing here in a second, is just an example of what you might think about doing where you're saying user bin env and then wherever in the path statement for that user who could be executing this program, it's going to go find the bash shell. Or you could even put in here just sh, right? So because sh is typically nowadays aliased or linked to the bash executable. So if I was to delete this line, right, let's make a change here. And now we've only got those lines. We have all these options down here on the bottom in Nano, right? So what do we do? And Nano is much easier to use than VI. So I could just simply do Control X, right? And you can see it says save modified buffer, meaning do we want to save the changes we made to the file? I'll put a capital Y in there. Now it's even going to ask us, hey, do you want to just write it out to the file name that you opened initially, or are you interested in maybe changing the name? And so I'm just going to hit enter there. Now this convention here at the end of the file name, you might be wondering, why do we end it in .sh? Well, this just is a representation. This is what you used to use as a file name extension to easily identify the files as born shell, as opposed to maybe a C shell script. So you would just put .sh. And again, sometimes you'll see .bash, but typically it's just .sh because at this point, the born shell really isn't used. It's the born again shell, the bash shell. So it's the same thought behind why you put .py at the end of a Python script file name, so that when someone pulls this up and says ls-l or ls, we can easily look at these files and I can be like, oh yeah, okay, well there's a Python script and then, well, we got a bunch of shell scripts in here, it looks like. So it gives you and the user an idea as to what files are doing, right, or what those files are that are in that directory. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to work, you see how you can use nano. I'm much happier using VI, so let's just go ahead and say user input.sh, and here we are in our file. Now, at the very top here, the lab refers to this as shebang, and I think that that was a terrible American Idol audition song that some guy did, is shebang. Typically, you hear it as shebang, right? So it's typically S-H-A bang, like that, shebang. And the reason it's sh and not she is that is a pound sign, but it also has another name in English, which is the sharp. And you see it, I think, in music as well, right? So S-H-A-R-P is sharp, so it's shebang, not I think the guy's name was William Hung or Hang or something like that did the shebang American Idol thing. So anyway, I kind of chuckled when I saw that they refer to it as shebang, because typically people are saying shebang, right? Because it's sharp sign, so you say shebang. All right, but that's what that is. And again, it's just simply telling the script where the bash installation is at, and so that we can run it ultimately by simply using the file name. All right, so we've got all the commands that we need in here. Now, again, this is not Python. This is the Bourne shell. And again, the Bourne shell is a full feature-rich programming language, not as versatile as some other programming languages, but when you're on the CLI, on an Ubuntu system or whatever system you're working on where the bash shell is the default user shell, login shell, bash can be extremely powerful and very, very handy. And so all we're going to be doing here is we're going to be prompting the user, and this is how you prompt the user to enter their name. You use echo -in, and it says enter your name. And this is going to wait for the user to type something in, and then we're going to read in what the user enters, and then we are simply going to echo out. And in the bash shell, in order to get the value from a variable, unlike Python where we would just put user name by itself, and outside of the double quotes here, in the shells, right, in the Bourne shell, you simply do a $sign before the name of the variable, and we keep it inside the parentheses here. And so when it's preceded by a $sign, the shell knows, hey, what follows is going to be a variable name. And so that's what we've got here in this really simple script. You're going to see a lot of additional echo commands when we go to do, I believe it's part 5, where we're creating the shell script that is going to stage our Dockerfile. All right, so now we're going to say LSL, and we'll say user-input.sh, because we want to see all of the information here. And now we're all about the permissions, right? Because if I was to try to execute this file by saying /user-input.sh, we get permission denied. Why do we get permission denied? Because the owner does not have execute permission, the group does not have execute permission, and everyone else does not have execute permission. In other words, there's no execute permissions on this file. There's a couple of ways we could change this, right? I could say chmod and change mode, and we could adjust only the owner's execute permission, right? And the way I would do that is I would say 7 and then keep the other user bits the same. So it'd be 6-4. And by other users, I mean we've got the owner, we've got the group is the 6, and we've got everyone else is the 4. So I could say chmod 764 user input .sh, right? They show you an example of using the letters. You could say chmod a plus x, right? And what is that going to do? Well, that's going to give all of the permission, all of the user execute bits are going to be set. Or you could say chmod u plus x, which just means the user, the owner of the file. So let's do this one. So if I said chmod u plus x, user-input, user-input.sh, and we hit enter, and then we say ls-l, you can see that only the owner has the execute permission added. If we ran the command that they show in the lab, and I did a plus x, and then we do ls-l, you can see that it gives all of the user execute bits execute permission. So the owner has execute permission, the group has execute permission, and then if you're not the owner and you're not in that group for the file, which is DEVASC, then you still have execute permissions on this. So now we could say // and execute the file. Now, only the user is going to be executing this, and so what we're going to do here, and I think, what did I do? I thought I did the 764. All right, so we'll switch this here. We'll do 764, and we'll change it. Oops, sorry, we'll change it back to, we'll clear the screen, say ls-l, so that only the owner can actually execute this script, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and now they want us to rename the file and remove the .sh extension. Now, my personal feeling on this is that they're doing this to show you how to rename the file. However, if this is a shell script, right, a bash shell script, we want to leave that .sh at the end. But again, they're just kind of showing us that this is how we might move this file around. So if I said move user.input or user-input.sh, and they have us change the name to just user input. And then it's from here that they want us to go ahead and execute the script. And it says, it's interesting, it says, now the script can be run from the command line without the source command or an extension, right? So to run a bash script without the source command, you must preface the script with a /. So let's do what they show us how to do. So we'll say / user input. And the reason that this works now is the execute bit is set. So I'll put my name in here as Travis, and then it just echoes back out what you entered in for name. Now, what if we reran that move command and we put the .sh at the end? If I say / user-input.sh and hit enter, the script still runs. So the wording that says now the script can be run from the command line without the source command or an extension, what they're saying is that's because of the execute bit. It's not because we moved the file to have, changed the file name to have no extension. Because we put the execute bit permission on there, now I can say /. And what they mean by the source command is if I didn't have the execute bit, so let's say chmod a-x on user-input, and this is removing the execute. I could say u-x, but I just said a-x to pull it from all. So now if I say ls-l, you'll see that it's back to 664 for the permissions on user-input.sh. So if I, and again, if I tried to say / user-input.sh and hit enter, we get permission denied. But if I say, what if I say bash user-input.sh? Well, now it runs, and this is what they're referring to. This is the sourcing thing that they're talking about, right? And they have it highlighted. So what if you said source user-input.sh? It's also going to work because you're saying source it, and the bash shell knows that this is going to use bash to run, because not only does the file name end in sh, but we also have that magic number in the script. So without the execute permission bit set, and the same is true for our Python scripts that we have, right? When we don't have the execute permission bit set, I can't say / and then the name of the Python file. I have to say Python3 space and then the name of the file. So it's just some semantics behind how we're executing the script. But at the end of the day, on step 9, know that it's, when it says now the script can be run from the command line without the source command or an extension, it's because the execute bit was set. So let's rerun that move command, and let's see what happens when it doesn't have .sh as the file name extension. See, it still runs, right? Because we're sourcing it. So that comment that they have there is not 100% correct. Because again, the permissions are 664 here, and user-input doesn't have the execute bit set, and I can say bash user-input and it's going to run, right? Or I can say source user-input with no file name extension, and it's going to run. And the reason that that is working for us is we're telling it use bash, right? And when we say source, it's going to read that file, and inside that file is our shebang bin bash, our magic number. And so that's why it'll work like that. But again, best practice is we would not cut off the file name extension. Again, they're just showing you, different approaches here and moving the file around. But the bottom line is we would want to keep that file name extension at the end of our file. Whoops, and I think, where are we at here? I thought we had it in here, and there we go. We would want to keep that extension at the end of our file name so that someone else that came in here would know, hey, that is a bash script, right? So how do we end up this lab part 2? Right there. Again, we saw some basic commands that we can drop in there. And then the lab has a note. Go ahead and, hey, check with ChatGPT to create. Tell ChatGPT, create for me a bash shell tutorial that's focused on creating bash shell scripts, right? And that's what the lab is telling you. If you've got little or no experience with bash, then dive in there, right? And it's going to give you some good code samples that you can use, and then jump onto your Ubuntu virtual machine or your DEVASC virtual machine and go to town. All right, well, that is it for part 2 of Lab 6.2.7. We're now going to go back, circle back here, take a look at part 3. We're going to create a sample web app using Flask. And we're going to extend the functionality of Flask here substantially because we're actually going to start to use actual web page files in order to display, or website files like an index.html and a style.css, because you can do some very cool things with Flask. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.